the competitive advantage we have over here is to compete on price for the same quality of work, and then everybody will be comfortable. So I think if there are agents over there that can get work over here, I think that would be a very helpful thing for everybody.
This is Bantu, the African Creative Podcast. Hey, welcome back to Bantu, the African Creative Podcast. I'm Adetunji Paul. This is our penultimate episode. It's hard to believe that the end is getting closer. It's summertime right now, and I sincerely hope you're listening wherever you are with some sunlight. This episode is brought to you by Cyber for Schoolgirls. Did you know that women make up only 24% of the cybersecurity industry? Cyber for Schoolgirls is a non-profit organization working to close that gap by enabling the next generation of female cybersecurity professionals. Visit Cyber for Schoolgirls to sign up for more information and find Cyber for Schoolgirls on LinkedIn to stay up to date. Our guest this week is Emmanuel Dankyi. He's the co-founder and creative lead of Lime and Honey. They are a digital and brand agency out of Accra, Ghana. We're going to be talking about his creative journey, his agency, Lime and Honey, and as we always do, the African creative industry. Now, my conversation with Emmanuel. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Adetunji, for having me.
Thanks for coming on board. Really great to have you. So I'd like to kick off with your backstory. Where did you grow up?
Ghana, Kumasi. I grew up in Kumasi, in Ghana. And I've lived there for majority of my life. I ran away to Accra in my second year of university. So I had an internship gig inside Accra, which led me to come to Accra. So I went back to school second year. I came back to the same place to do a second internship. And then right after school, I got another job offer here in Accra. So I just packed up and moved permanently to Accra, where I've been for since, when was that? Since 2017, I think. Yes, so since 2017, I've been living permanently in Accra. Yeah.
Would you be able to tell me about your early years? Was there much creativity in it? Were you an artist? Were you drawing or writing poems?
So I would say that it was a hidden part of me up until junior high school. So the whole story was that I wouldn't say I was a super brilliant student, but I was somewhere, up there. And so all my teachers and everybody thought I was going to be a science student, which is what everybody expects from quote unquote a brilliant student.
Yeah.
Everybody science and then go on to do engineering or medicine or whatever. And lucky for me, I think when we were about to write our final exam, the BC, they changed the whole curriculum for my batch. So I don't know, my batch has always been like an experimental lab batch for the government, because anytime we are about to finish school, something major changes, either the syllabus or the courses or the type of exam or something. So that changed, and we had to include a new subject, which was now compulsory for everybody, which was visual arts. The way the visual arts teacher taught the course, he started with basic and basic elements of design, principles of design, and all those things. And it was intriguing to me. And in my mind, I was like, where has this course been all my life? Because I really felt alive. I really felt happy in that class. And so without having enough knowledge in under a year learning this course, at that point in time, I knew in my heart of hearts that this is what I wanted to do. And I wasn't second guessing it, So in hindsight now, I feel like I probably made a rash decision without thinking twice. I didn't do my research about what job opportunities I would get and what the future looked like. And also there wasn't enough examples of people who had, succeeded in high places in that particular course around. So my mom was like, she won't force me. If she had her way, I would continue with the science, but like she would leave me to do what I want to do. And fast forward, visual arts in high school, went on to do communication design in university, and then majored in animation. And here I am now. So no, I didn't really know how to draw. I wouldn't say I was like a very creative person who had been drawing and combining colors since I was young, or writing poems or anything like that.
Right.
So I learned how to draw. I learned all those other things. But I would say I feel like I had, an artistic part of me which I hadn't discovered up until later in my life. Because even looking back, I remember times when my mom used to do a little bit of textile printing and tie and dye, and she was a music person and all those things. So looking back, I'm like, maybe those little traits from my mom were somewhere hidden, and then me following this path sort of uncovered everything. Because the more I go deeper, the more I realized I could do, a number of things from, writing to directing to designing to painting to drawing to all these other things. So yeah, that's how my story is basically.
So essentially your experience with visual arts in high school unlocked this creative life for you.
Yes, exactly.
And you became inspired.
Mm-hmm.
I see all of your work. And just for our listeners, Emmanuel produces a range of creative work from motion design to graphic design, product design, digital design, websites, anything that moves and has colors and can exist on a screen or in physical, Emmanuel makes it. And they're characterized by very, very bright colors. Most of the time, they're very vibrant, they're very popping in terms of how they move. What is your inspiration that sort of guides your maybe creativity? Where does the inspiration come from?
So I think it comes from a wide range of things. So at first, I was very scared of color. That is hard to believe right now, but I used to be scared of throwing in a lot of colors in my work. More of the inspiration for color came from the things I was watching mostly. So my school father, when I began my motion design journey, my school father gave me a whole bunch of motion graphic, not tutorials, but like videos people had done. Mm-hmm. And then I used to binge watch those for like maybe 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours straight, just watching works from other people. And I did that for a couple of months before even opening After Effects to try anything at all. And it always used to amaze me, like how people were able to combine, all those different elements and all those things to make very vibrant work that still made sense. Because at that point in time, I was used to very minimal, clean, simple design.
Right.
And so adding in a lot more elements and colors and everything just scared the hell out of me, because I'm like, how do I add all these things for it to still be clean, for it to still be minimal, for it to still make sense? So I had to do, my due diligence by learning a lot about color theory and the psychology behind color and all those things. And basically, I think for me, it was a garbage in, garbage out thing. So all those things I started watching for months and months without trying to replicate anything at first, I think subconsciously began to inform my decisions, and also coupled with my personal interest or my personal biases with certain colors and certain, the way certain things look. That's sort of drove a certain direction for me. Way back in school, a few of my friends would laugh at this right now, but I used to tell myself as like a philosopher for championing black and white work, because I felt like black and white really sold the essence of work, as opposed to color, which sold the beauty of what the thing is. But if you wanted to channel, the inner meaning, the actual meaning of something, you have to do it in black and white. So I started a string of illustrations where everything I did was in black and white. And then I began to introduce one color at a time. So I'll do a whole illustration of maybe an environment in black and white, and then there'll be a single accent color drawing your attention to something. So from there, then I began to start playing around with, lights and how light plays on different subjects in illustrations. So I began to I did a little bit of photography also in first year. So I guess, so all those little skill sets that I picked up. So I began to look at drawing as photography, because when you're illustrating, then you need to now think of your lighting. So where's my key light coming from? Where's my rim light coming from? Where is this light coming from?
Yeah.
And if I put a gel, if I'm shooting in the studio and I put this color gel on this one, and the complementary of that color is this color, and I gel the other lights with this, how would that look like? And so that's opened up a whole range of, possibilities for discovery for me. So sometimes I used to work with the colors I'm comfortable with, and then I'll just do a hue and saturation filter on it, and then start pulling the slider to see what other interesting color combinations I would get. And then I'll record those. So those were like accidental color combinations that would happen that look really interesting. So that's something I still do even to date. So maybe if I'm doing an illustration or a work or something like that, I'm trying to figure out colors, I just throw in two complementary colors that I know I'm comfortable working with, do a hue and saturation slider on it, and then start moving it around to see what other interesting color combinations I would get. And I always get like pretty interesting results with that. So that's basically the whole like inspiration behind, how colorful my work is right now. And I've got into a space whereby I'm not scared to, experiment or play around with colors. So, and I keep learning the rules and trying to break the rules. But I think the main thing I would say is garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you take a look at, whatever you watch, whatever you digest, that is what you eventually produce. So even when you take a look at like my social media feed, as in from my point of view, from what I'm looking at, the people I follow, from Instagram to Twitter, I stopped using Facebook a while back. All the visual mediums that I consume content is like very heavily curated, to the point where on my Instagram, if I'm scrolling through my feed and I see a selfie from somebody, and I go to your page and I find out maybe you are not a designer, or maybe you're a designer, but you started posting more selfies of yourself than work you do, I'll either mute you or unfollow you straight away, because I'm very particular about what my eyes see,
right?
Because eventually that is what I'm going to produce. So it's a very heavily curated lifestyle. So yeah.
That's very interesting, and I do thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a creative journey rather than a single source of inspiration. I'd like to find out about your experience, Emmanuel. You started from a very simple place. You went to Creo Concepts, and now you founded a digital agency.
Yeah.
Well, take us through your experience from Creo Concepts to Lime and Honey.
Okay, so I think I would say I'm very thankful for those experiences that I've had through my journey, because it's almost like everything was put in place for me. I think in second year, I started, my Instagram page, posting, random stuff. I had no plan. I was just, expressing myself. And then I was thinking of going to do an internship during the long vacation, because I hated staying at home, 3 months doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think my first year I did 2 internships. And then my second year, I wanted to do an internship, but like all the agencies I was seeing around, nobody was really, exciting me like that. So I was still looking when miraculously I had a DM from Creo Concepts. And then they were discussing wanting to have me on the team full time. And then that's when I told them, oh, I'm a student. And they were like, oh, okay, they thought I was out of school, which was very interesting for me because I was only in second year and they see my work thinking that I was already out of school was, some kind of encouragement for me. And so I took an internship instead. And so, so second year I interned with Creo, and Creo is not your typical, creative agency that you find over here in Ghana with, a lot of bureaucracy and, official, quote unquote, official nature and vibe. It was a very unorthodox place. And so I found, happiness, and I felt at home over there because they didn't do things like you would normally do anywhere. And I learned a whole lot of things which helped me even in school. Because when I went back, the way I did my assignments changed. The way I presented my work changed. The way I thought to projects and processes and work processes changed drastically because of the way they used to do their things over there. So over there, I think I was doing mostly brand identity design and a few illustrations here and there. I hadn't touched animation over there yet. That changed my approach to design and everything very drastically. And then while I was in school, I still used to do some work for them as and when I had the time. And then in third year, that was the official school internship. I went straight back there because it was a no-brainer for me to just, go right back there because there was a whole lot I needed to learn again. And I had the opportunity to start my animation journey over there. And so I began learning a few tips from the animators over there. And then I had a couple of tutorials that I used to watch myself. And I think I had the chance to collaborate with them on one or two, clients projects. And on my own, I used to work on, sample animations or ideas, random ideas that I had. And then I'll just go and show it to the boss or show it to the animator over there and help me tweak a few things. And then I'll put it on my personal page. So that also encouraged, a certain spirit of automation in me that I felt I had to, do more to be able to get to the stage where they'll say, oh, hey, Emmanuel, there's this client's project. Would you like to handle it? Which didn't really come that easy over there because, they also had a certain standard to uphold. So that whole process or that whole 2-year process really taught me a lot that I still use some of the things I still use even today. Getting closer to the end of my final year, I had another job offer from OMG Digital. So OMG Digital it was a Y Combinator funded digital marketing agency. So that also was exciting for me because it wasn't a typical agency and they didn't do client work. So most of what we did at OMG was content creation. And that was a really fun experience. So my main job over there was to, help evolve the brand. So it was like having a baby to be working on the brand identity consistently for over a period of time. So I would work on the visual identity for the brand, helping rebranding as and when we need to do that. I was doing branding for the shows, animating, opening graphics, end graphics, some of all those things. So it was running they basically called it, the BuzzFeed of Africa.
I was just about to ask you to clarify that OMG Digital, they're a content publisher platform. They have their own sort of media thing going on, right?
Exactly. So it was a very exciting time. Also another very unorthodox, place. So I wouldn't say I've had experience in a very traditional design or digital agency setting because all the places I've worked at are very left-wing, unorthodox agency. From there, I had a little bit of digital marketing knowledge from other people, content creation. I would say from there, I wasn't just a designer or just a creative or just an animator, because I worked there, I began to gain insights or knowledge into a little bit of digital marketing and content creation and what that is about, and the extent of how that can be taken. So that from there, I was like, okay, so
right.
Backtracking a little bit, when after school, I told myself wherever I would end up working, I'll give them 2 years and then I'll start my own thing, because I like to see myself as a free bird, and I wouldn't want to be tied down for a very long time. So exactly after 2 years, I left OMG, and then around that time, a friend of mine was also putting his job at another agency, and he was like, "Yeah, let's start something." So he was running something called Blue Line, and my side gig was called Beehive. So we began doing a couple of Monday motivation posts together, and we called that series of designs Slime and Annie. And so when it was time that he left his job, and I had also left my job, I'd been freelancing for a while, he came to me and I was like, he wants us to, just combine powers and start something. We didn't know what we were starting. We just wanted to start something. And so, yeah, there wasn't really a serious plan behind it. We just wanted to start something and see where it goes. And so we just decided to take the name from that series that we're doing and then just put it on the whole thing, and then just Lime and Annie. So a few people think it's a name that we thought about that has this really huge meaning behind it, but it's really just, he was Blue Lime, I was Beehive. We combined it together and we had Lime and Honey. There's no serious creative meaning behind it. It's just
that's a pretty good story in of itself. It's the two names of the businesses that you had on your own. So Lime and Honey is born, and this is what, around 2017?
2017, 2018, 2019, May 2019, that's when we incorporated Lime and Honey. And so we've been in operations officially since May 2019.
And what type of projects do you do at Lime and Honey?
So it's mostly brand identity design. There's motion graphics and animation. And there's digital marketing and content creation. And then there's this other aspect, which is which we don't get the time to do as much these days because of client work, but we also do a little bit of animation production for our own in-house stories. We have a couple of those that we are still working on that we haven't got a chance to finish yet, but that's also something that we love doing.
I think I saw one of those. I'm going to botch the name now. I think it was something of a man.
Dear Black Man.
Dear Black Man. Thank you. That's it. Yeah. Tell me about Dear Black Man. What's that? So
that was actually it was a commercial project for this. She's a poet, a musician called Didi. Didi, her official name is, her stage name is Didi Speaks. She's a Ghanaian living in the US, I think. So she had this poem, and she reached out to me a couple of years ago that she wanted to put or add visuals to it. And so the sound and everything was produced, so we just gave it a listen, and then we started work on that. So I think that was our first, or one of the first, passion stroke commercial projects that we did, because there was not much riding on it, because it's not a commercial project that is selling anything. It's just putting out a story, And that particular film, I think, helped me get a chance to travel to the UK for a film festival. And I think that was also by kind courtesy Accra Animation Film Festival, which is a new film festival that was established here in Ghana 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago. I'm very bad with dates, forgive me. Yeah. So once that project kicked off and we launched it later, I think later that year after launching it, that was when Accra Animation Film Festival also launched, and they were having this exchange program with Encounters in the UK, and I had the chance to travel over there to the Encounters Film Festival together with I think 2 animators, and then the festival director, and then the festival manager, I think. Yeah. So we flew over to the UK. We screened the film along with other Ghanaian films and Nigerian films and a few other African countries. And that was interesting, because one lesson I also learned from that was that sometimes passion projects do matter. Not that sometimes, all the times passion projects do matter. And in another life, somebody would have probably wanted to charge full rates for that project and say, these are my rates. It's a commercial project, these are my rates. And then if you can't afford it, we can't work on it. But this was like a more of a collaborative effort. Because when I listened to the piece, I was like, okay, this is good. I wouldn't mind working on this for free, but that is also not possible. So we had to meet somewhere in the middle, and then we worked on it. And out of that, I had a chance to, travel outside the country and then meet, all these other people. And it's been a fun ride since then. So yeah, that's the story behind that piece.
Wow. That is amazing. That is really amazing. And it's interesting that you mentioned the passion project thing, because I think there's an element where, and I think I see this through your work, where you almost approach your commercial projects like as if they are so close to your heart, their passion. There's a lot of emotion that seems to come through your commercial work. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, very correct.
So I'd like to expand this conversation a little bit and go a little bit wider and talk to you about yourself, the business, and the industry at large. Have you had international collaborations with Lime and Honey, maybe with a customer that's overseas, or excluding, I suppose, say a brand, for example, overseas, or another agency who's contracting you overseas?
So I think on the client side, we've had a couple of a few projects that we've done for people outside, both in the UK and the US. And there are some of them that we still work together with till date. And on the agency side, we've had a few attempts at collaborations, but immediately we are about to sign off, something comes up and then it doesn't happen. I don't know why, but but that in itself, I think, is, potential. And I think very recently, I think through a friend, I also got the chance to work on something for Envision. And that was a very interesting project. It was an illustrating project for Martin Luther King Day. So I think on the international front, we are getting there. We are getting there because the exposure is there. The internet is free of charge. There's a whole lot of platforms where you can blast your work and get, people to notice you. And also, I think one thing that I have a friend who always says is that it's very easy to get, international collaborations, mainly for the fact that, we are good enough, our work is good enough and it's competitive enough with the other people over there. And when it comes down to it, you can't compete on price, because whatever money they are paying over there, they slash it off by a little bit, and then you bring it over here, you do the exchange. That's like a whole lot of money for you over here. So that's the advantage for you working remotely over here and getting work internationally. Because the same work you do, all the work that we've done for clients who have paid us back in dollars, the same project you do for somebody here, you can't charge the equivalent of that money in Ghana cedis for that particular client over here, because the standard of living in the market is like too different.
Completely different.
Totally different. So you can't really play that game when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But I think it's been good. And sometimes when I tell people I get work from Behance, they are surprised because Behance just looks like you just dump your work there and then you go and then you come back. But if you are really active there, so Behance, Dribble, and now I think there's Lottie, you could be posting work on all these platforms, and then you can get work irrespective of where you are if your work is good enough. So that's the experience that I've had. And so
interesting,
because there's always people online looking for talents, and you just have to present your work in a way that speaks to a specific type of people, and then they will reach out. Because all the time when people reach out to those channels, they refer one work or two works that they saw, and they feel like, okay, this is my vibe, and I don't think anybody else can do it better than you. So even though we are all doing design, we are all doing animation, if you pick a niche and you pick a style and you stick to it, that really sometimes helps, because somebody sees that and it's like immediately they know, okay, this is the kind of vibe I'm looking for. So they don't go to your page and they see a lot of different things that are all over the place. And I've been studying a lot of how these agencies and animation studios work outside. So from agency to agency, from studio to studio, you realize that every single one of them has a very distinct style that works for very specific brands. And so when a brand is looking for a particular vibe, they know exactly who to choose, and they know exactly where to go. So that's kind of the strategy I've been trying to apply to myself. There are a couple of projects that don't really fit our kind of vibe and the type of work that we do. Such projects, sometimes you don't really post them, because when you post it, it feels very different from the brand you've built for yourself. So
be a conflict.
So in terms of marketing ourselves and pushing ourselves out there, there's a very specific way for how we want people to see us for the type of work we do, and also to attract a very specific kind of people. So if you're not that type of person and you see our work and you can't relate to it, there's no way you call us up and say, hey, I need work from you.
No, it's fine. And so your general stance is that it's easy, right?
It's not that easy, but I think it's easy. It's easier than before. Yeah.
Right. It's easier than before. Do you think that getting represented by agents outside, or let's say represented by agents based outside Africa, would help gain more international clients, international collaboration, press, media, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, I think so. I mean, we haven't explored trying to do that, but I think that is something that would absolutely work. Because a friend of mine runs a design team at an agency here in Ghana, and this year their focus is to get into Silicon Valley, and they have a contact person over there who has brought them a couple of gigs, and now all they have to do is execute the gigs to the quality that is expected of the client. And then from there, referrals will be very easy for them to get. So once you get a contact person in there and you have your foot in the door and you execute the work to their satisfaction, the competitive advantage we have over here is to compete on price for the same quality of work. And then everybody will be comfortable. So I think if there are agents over there that can get work over here, I think that would be very a very helpful thing for everybody. As long as we are also able to deliver the work to the same quality that they are expecting to get, which I think is something that we already do. So that shouldn't be a problem.
And if say, for example, this is a blue ocean and something like this happened, you had agents based outside Africa, and that person's job or their job, if there were a group of people, would be to connect essentially your business with people who want some kind of project done. What type of work would you want to do the most? Imagine your ideal project. What would that be?
So my ideal project would be a project that tells a story, because that's the core of everything that we do at Slime and Annie, is to tell stories. So any project that tells an interesting story, so from that would range from animation to brand identity, helping a brand craft a very interesting, nice story and attach visuals to that. That would be something that I feel would be interesting to look at.
I think it's the case where I've asked this question several times, and I keep on coming back to stories and things that have a lot of value and a lot of meaning, either to the creators themselves or to the audience that it's intended for. And there's something there to be said about the innate creativity within the African context. I was going to ask you, what do you think is really the next logical step? And I'll ask for the general audience first. What's the next logical step for the African creative industry, especially if they want to reach a point where we can acquire international collaborations so much easier than before? How do we move forward?
So I think the best thing anybody can do for themselves is to put themselves out there and be authentic. Be authentic in the sense that there is kind of, an international standard, in quotes, that everybody sort of looks at or sort of looks up to when they are trying to learn design or tell themselves that they've reached a certain, pedestal. And that ideal, quality has a little bit of a Western feel to it. So if anybody sees if you look at anybody's mood board for themselves for like the next level of what they want their designs to look at or whatever, it's most probably going to be Western, So
yeah,
I think my thing would be, how do you still get a certain level of quality that can compete with that generalized quality that everybody looks at, while still being authentic, while still being yourself? Because if attaining the quality and everything is good, but if you overdo it, you begin to create work that looks like them. And then, to be honest, in the pool, if you begin to create top quality work that looks like what they have already been seeing all the time, then you enter into a space where you are competing with a lot more people than you normally would. So my thing is to go where there's no competition, basically. So if you are doing work, let's try and get, the quality and then still be authentic as African creatives, So if somebody sees your work, if somebody sees how your work looks, how your characters look, how your color combination works, they can see that, okay, this is still top quality work, but where is this work coming from? This work is very different, and then let's try our best to blast it out on every possible channel that we can, because people are constantly looking for work. And I don't think we have to get to a place where we are not getting work because we are only competing on price, and also because people will say, oh, wow, this work is coming from Africa. You know how people will see certain type of work and they'll ask you, where are you from? You are from Ghana, you are from Africa. They are surprised that this quality of work is coming from Africa. But we have to get to a stage where that is no more the conversation, where you are getting the work not because this work is too good for Africa or too good for an African, but it's good enough to compete on international standards, but also looks different and authentic enough to get paid the same amount that you're going to pay a big agency over there, and not because, you are competing with price and that your work is good enough. So I think it's a long answer, but I feel like that's the next logical step for us to do. Get, quality content, put ourselves out there as much as we can, and then not necessarily try to compete with what everybody is competing with, but create your own, create your own style, create your own journey, create your own elements and put it out into the world. So, for example, there's a whole bunch of free resources you can get when it comes to creative assets that are related to the web. So when it comes to mockups, billboards, and icon packs, illustrations, wallpapers, all those free assets and all those things mostly are, dominated by Western cultural stuff, Western environments. But there's very little of those things being created by Africans over here in Africa. And the few people who are doing it are not many enough to, push at that scale, because if there's only a few pieces in the puzzle that are working, it defeats the whole purpose. So you have a few artists that are, making waves and putting the name of Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya out there. But as a collective, we need to do more when it comes to those things. Because I should be able to get, free resources when I Google Black illustration packs or African icons or icons for Ghanaian monuments, or, there's one person can't do all those things. It has to be done at scale so that we also get there and people see that, we are all now competing on a similar level or the same level, and we can see, a certain difference in culture, a certain difference in character, a certain difference in vibe. And now people can also begin to learn what African design looks like, what African design standards are, what that is like, and the whole world can, share and then mix cultures and all that. So that's a long form answer I would give.
This long form answer is one of the best answers I've received. And I think your point about how things start to look Western when you look at what is considered the highest quality got me thinking about something else I've been meaning to ask you, which is, does culture, African or otherwise, influence what you do, your craft?
Yes, very much it does.
And in what way?
In the early years of my design journey, obviously all the tutorials you watch when you're learning design, all the work you watch or you look at for inspiration when you're learning design are by these people who are from Europe, the European artists, the big American designers, and all these people. So those are your inspiration when you're coming up. So it's very difficult to say you're not going to be designing like them, because that's the standard that everybody sees is the top standard, and that's what you're learning. But it got to a point where I was like, I think we did a little bit of art history in school. So we're learning about all these art movements and all those things. And it got to a point where I was like, I saw certain similarities in some of the art movements in history that had a similar vibe to what African arts looked like. So that's, for me, was a trigger, and that looked very interesting for me. So I was like, okay, what happens if I merge, see, the Renaissance arts with a painting style that they used to do in my village when I was growing up, or something like that? What would happen? Or how would that look like? So I think one art movement that inspires me heavily is the Memphis art movement. So it's an art movement that's like characterized by a lot of colors, shapes, and abstract patterns. And when you look at typical African design, that is also a trait that is evident in there, like shapes, colors, patterns. But the only difference, I think, is that African designs look a little bit less structured and geometric than that of the West. So ours is like a little bit more fluid and, natural and flowing, and less calculated than what you see in, a typical design from the West. So that was an interesting thing for me to merge. So I think I did this, again, back to personal projects. I did this project where I was taking a look at how I could merge cultures, right? So if it was an illustration, I picked maybe Chinese culture and I picked Akan culture. What are the things I can merge from both? Maybe I pick the Greek culture, I pick something from Nigeria. I combine that. What does that look like? So that also gave me a little bit of insight into how best you can stand out. Because to be very honest, standing out is hard, and being original is extra hard, almost impossible, because everything you think of, somebody has already thought of, So how else do you stand out? And I found that like merging, just like colors, mixing complementary colors and playing around that gives you very different vibes that almost no one else is used to. It's also very interesting to see how you merge, when you merge different cultures, with the results those give you. So sometimes when I'm working on pattern designs for a brand or something like that, I can take a look at, the typical stuff I'm used to taking for inspiration, and then I'll pick something from maybe Japanese culture, and I'll go and pick something from Greek mythology or something like that. And then I'll mix all those three. When you see it, it looks like something that you've seen before. You feel like there's something about it that is very familiar, but you can't quite put a finger on it, and it looks very different. And it's very hard, it's very difficult to reproduce. So I find that culture and learning history of art and learning history of design is something that also has influenced the way I do certain things, because I like to mix and match a lot of different things. And I think that's also evident in even how I live my life, from the way I eat my food to everything. I just like experimenting with stuff. If I see something and I'm like, I just get the thought that what if this is mixed with this? I'll just go ahead and mix it and see what happens. If a bomb goes off,
just mix everything together.
Yes, if a bomb goes off and you die, you die. But like the journey or the process of experimenting just gives a lot more insights and different ways of doing things that will make people wonder how in the hell did you come up with these ideas? But it doesn't happen by magic. Everything you want to do, everybody has ever done. So what if I take what everybody has done and then I mix the bits and pieces? And I think there's a book that speaks a little bit more about this concept, which is called Still Like an Artist. I've forgotten who wrote it. But it's also a very interesting book that gives a little bit more insight about, taking the head from this artist or designer, taking the leg from that person, taking the stomach from this person, and building your own Frankenstein. And then that becomes essentially who you are or what you do. So I think that's it.
You have an interesting take on how you use different cultures, especially because it has this sort of historical slant on it that once you put this back into maybe work within an African environment, it looks like we are globalizing our own selves in a large sense. And it is, I suppose it's really, really magnificent to see. And so I would like to wrap up by asking you like a couple of things. First thing is, what's something you can get with African people that you can't get anywhere else?
I'd say the stories, because there is a whole lot of stories and a whole lot of histories and a whole lot of things in our culture that even us living here, who have lived here our whole life, do not know. Because the media has been saturated with a lot of stories from the West, so our idea of storytelling, our idea of stories, our idea of what certain things should look like, our idea of beauty, hair, riches, all those things have been skewed in a way, to be looking in that direction. But I feel like there is a whole bunch of stories over here which we can tell ourselves, which the world has never heard of before, which the world has never seen before, or even the stories that we already know, but from a very different perspective. Because I feel like every culture everywhere relates to things very differently. And so that is one thing that I would say we have, which nobody else has, which you won't get from anywhere, is the way we tell our stories and the quality of stories that we have over here. I think if a lot of African producers or film directors had the budgets like Hollywood has to work with, there's a whole lot of, stories from spiritual, especially to I don't think sci-fi would be very authentic, but like even let's say on the spiritual level, right? You see the way Japanese people depict their, in quotes, witchcraft and dragons and all those things, and it's like really beautiful. And when you come here, your old people and your grandmothers and grandfathers will be telling you certain stories that have this kind of supernatural, entity or supernatural backstory or whatever to it. And then your imagination runs wild. And you're like, what if there's like a CGI budget for a story like this? What would that look like? So
right.
I feel like there's a whole lot to be uncovered over there. And I don't know, I can't put a finger on exactly what is keeping it covered, but I feel like another thing also is most of us don't know. We grew up on a lot of other things that are not our culture. So, and sometimes it scares me, because what if this whole generation, because we are like the last generation before the TikTok generation, and then everything dies off. So if our parents don't hand those down to us, and even if they did, and we also sway, and we don't keep those stories and we don't tell those stories, our kids will grow up not knowing those stories, and then everything would just be erased, because there's no proper documentation of our history in terms of visuals and what that looked like. But when you look at Greek mythology and Norse mythology and all these Asian history and all those things, there's like really clean visuals, from animation to design to movies to books and all those things that tell those stories. So those stories are like forever immortalized. But when you come down here, it's always been word of mouth. So if we all die at once and it's only left with the TikTok generation right now, very few of them would know what the African story really is and what it's about. And that is something that really scares me. So I think that's something that we have that nobody else have, but we haven't been able to tap into it enough. And I think, maybe it's no fault of ours, maybe it's our fault, but like we should try to change the narrative before it's too late.
Well said. I think the story angle is pretty important because it uncovers a relatability with our own audience.
Yeah.
What is next for Lime and Honey?
I think what is next is a bit vague, and it's clear in my mind, but it's a little bit unclear in terms of actions. So I think that would be so the next step for us is, if we were to go a step further with storytelling, it would be to create experiences, because we feel like, or we believe that people remember more, or they relate more with things they experience than anything. So when you talk to somebody, you may not remember exactly every single word that they said, but one thing is for sure, that you remember how the person made you feel. And that is something inherent in human nature that we would like to tap into. So taking storytelling a step further, how can we tell stories that are also experiences at the same time? And that would have us looking at, a lot more mediums, a lot more channels where we can put those out. So we've recently started doing some research into AR and how we can use that into marketing. And so that's one thing that I feel like we would be getting into heavily next is AR, augmented reality. And I mean, we've been playing on the surface with things like Instagram filters and all those things, but like in the long term, we would want to, have our own platform that hosts experiences that could be used for simple storytelling or marketing or stuff like that. So I'd say anything, there's other experiences, there's other channels of experiences that I would like to experiment with, but those take like a huge amount of dollars and all those things to invest in. And sadly, it would be an experiment for us because there's not much evidence for those kinds of things over here. And so that would be very difficult to, just pick up some money that you can't really dispose of and then just blast everything into and see how. That would be very fun to do, but like it doesn't make sense as a business now starting. So we want to take things rather slow. But I mean, storytelling experiences, and in the near future, I think creating more stories for ourselves. Because recently we've been in a lot of clients work back to back, so we haven't really had time to work on a lot of fun, interesting personal projects in-house that would help us explore a lot more things. But I'm currently working on 2 collaborations with one artist from Nigeria. He's also an illustrator and motion designer. I'm working on an animated short film with him, and then I'm working on another project which has taken about, I think, 2 years now, almost going to 3 years, and we are still not done. It's a short animated story about mosquitoes and all those things. So so those are like, I think, the next steps, and it's I think it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I'm saying it's vague because I'm in a mode of like constantly experimenting with new things. So I get bored very fast, and so when I do one thing over and over again for like 3-4 times, I just lose interest and I need to find the next thing to hop on. So for me, that's now is augmented reality, virtual reality experiences, and stuff like that.
I'm excited to see what you guys put out, and it's something that I think everyone who is listening to this will be very impressed with, no matter what, because it'll carry your philosophy and brand strategy ideas and really, really colorfulness into the whole thing. So I'm pretty excited for that. What is something that you've learned? One piece of advice that has always stuck with you?
One thing that I've learned in my journey is to, one, follow your guts, and two, always be experimenting without fear. I mean, the fear is always going to be there, but just do it anyway. Because the only way for you to find out if it's going to work or not is to actually try it and see. And I always tell myself there's no loss if you experiment and it fails, because once it fails, you get data to learn from. And if it succeeds, you get data in addition to the thing succeeding. So whatever it is you want to try out, just close your eyes, try it out, and then deal with the consequences later. And I think the third thing would be to, stay true to yourself. In a world where everybody's super sensitive about a lot of things, I think be careful when doing that, but still speak your truth, regardless. Maybe you get into a few fights here and there, but you learn something, and then be open-minded about it as well. So I think that would be it.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for sharing your insights and your knowledge with us and telling us about your story, telling me about your story, because it's something that is born of a lot of movement. It's a journey that you've experienced and has completely shaped how you see the world, the work that you want to do, the work that you have done, and the way you see this industry as a whole. And I really appreciate you for that. Where is a place that we can keep up with you and Lime and Honey? How can we find you on the internet?
My personal page, my design page at Junior K, JNRKAY, and on Twitter there's an underscore and an X. If you bring that same handle to Instagram, that's like my personal blog where I love traveling, and I'm also fun fact, I also run another agency on the side, which is travels. It's called Travels Ghana. So we basically travel and then document stuff. So I put some of that stuff on my personal page as well. That's Junior K _X. So that's that. For Lime and Annie, because the internet does not allow us to use the ampersand, we use an X. So sometimes people confuse it as it's part of the name and they say Lime X Annie, but it's really just to replace the ampersand, because Instagram and social media pages won't allow us to put an ampersand in there. So it's at Lime X Annie everywhere, and then the website is limexannie.com. So yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you so much. We're going to link to that in the show notes. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Emmanuel.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you too.
You've been listening to Emmanuel Dankyi of Lime and Honey. Please follow him on the inters of net using the links in the show notes. This episode was written and produced by me, Adetunji Paul, executive producer Blessing Usoro. Our music was produced by SamonJ and Darko Beats. Bantu the African Creative Podcast is a production of Studio Black. We're on Instagram at Studio BLVCK, on Twitter at Studio BLVCK_, and our website is studioblvck.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time, goodbye from the universe.